Hi there, my name's James Birchall, and lately I've had a lot of people asking me questions about how do you extend ManyChat using external requests. And um, it's quite intimidating for a lot of people because it does require that you use a fair amount of technical stuff that's probably not in your wheelhouse, as they say. For instance, you need to know how to write code, you need to know how to spin up a server, you need to have a server that's sitting on the end of something called a webhook, which is a URL or a web address endpoint that is event driven and is triggered when you actually call it. And then, of course, you need to know how to pass information backwards and forwards using JSON objects and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's not really for the faint of heart. However, there is an easy way to do it. And some research I concluded recently let me get around all of the really nasty technical stuff. Now, you still got some of it, you can't get past all of it, but I figured I'd show it to you. And the trick, of course, is let's just go into here. So I created something recently and I've called it FN library, function library. I'm working on a generic call, in this case, a callback or a webhook. And the idea being that if I call this URL, I can pass the parameter in and it'll do whatever I tell it to do, and then it'll give me answers back. So it's sort of a Swiss Army knife function. And right now I've called it FN FN library. But the thing you're going to need to use if you want to make any external requests is this action external request, right? It's probe. And I thought I'd kind of walk you through it because this is really a very simple looking. Let me maximize the screen. There we go. It's a very simple looking flow here. It's got the starting step, and there's no trigger tied to this because all I ever do is I run it in preview. I've got my external request, and then of course I've got my message that kicks back my variable. And I really want to show you the bit that gets interesting. So this is where, and you might be familiar with this, you enter the request URL. A couple of things. Part of the reason why you end up having to use special servers is because it has to be HTTPS. S stands for secure, like encrypted and all that fun stuff. And you need a server that actually will monitor any calls to this URL. Well, in this case, here it is. And by the way, the word default and FN library, that speaks to the stage, and in this case, the name of the function I'm calling. And then this lot here, this is the parameters that I've decided to send. Now, again, I'm probably going to be covering quite a bit of ground that you may or may not understand, but there's two kinds of types that you need to think about: get and post. Let's just talk about get for now because it's easy. Get keeps everything in the line up here, okay? This information, the question mark means parameter. So you can see here that says parameter F key equals add two numbers, ampersand, that means like next parameter P1 equals 25 and P2 equals 67. That's because this silly little function I wrote adds two numbers together, just as an example. And in this case, 25 and 67 are the variables that we pass, and this is the function that's going to get called. And what's going to happen is it's going to add those two together and it's going to spit the numbers back. So I hit test request. So what that just did was that fired this off, sent it to that address, passed the information across, and then kicked back this. This is a JSON object, and you need to understand how to deconstruct these things and map them out. Now, if you want to learn about JSON objects, honestly, if you're mildly geeky, you're going to lose your mind because they are super powerful and infinitely flexible and just awesome, in my opinion, especially data objects around the dictionary types in Python, but that's just another thing altogether. But if you look here, you'll see that I programmed all of this. So every single piece of this was me. And I'm going to actually show you the code in a sec. If you look here, I created something called return value. And return value, shocking as it might seem, is 25 plus 67 is 92, right? That's the answer. And that, by the way, is what you would use. That's the thing that the external request passes back. In this case, I'm passing back a math formula, a very simple one. And then you think, well, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, you map it And again, this is why I said you're going to need to learn a little bit about JSON. That there says the return value, the piece called the body, and the piece called the ret value, store it in the temp field. Here, let me show you. See the word body? Then you see these curly braces. Anything inside curly braces is sort of like a data list. And then if you look over here, remember I said there was something inside called ret value? See ret value? So body, ret value, and the way it goes. See? Dollar, body, ret val. That's how it actually finds the value and maps it in. So this is what an external request looks like. I know I've gone through this really quickly and I apologize, but if I wasn't, we'd be at this for hours. So you can send a URL to a location that you know is going to do something cool. Then you pass some parameters and you embed them here on the line. By the way, I've keyed them in, like I've literally typed them in here, but there's nothing to stop you putting in a variable. I've just picked page ID because it was the first one I found. But if I had variables holding the magic numbers that I wanted to add together, they would be there. That's how you use the bot to pass the variables to this line through to the external request and then back. So this is what the external request looks like over on ManyChat. Okay. So this, I'm going to close this window and I'm going to show you how you build the call on the other side. All right. It's going to get a little freaky, but just hang in there. You're going to need some cool tech. Now, what you're going to need is this. Now, you can use a lot of other things, but this is free. And Amazon Web Services will allow you, see, look at this, run code without thinking about servers and pay only for the compute time you consume. Now, don't panic. You're thinking, well, hang on. You get something like 1 million cycles or 1 million runs of your function a month for free. This is one of the services they offer on the free forever plan. So you don't need to worry about it. And by the way, if you're ever generating that many calls to your functions through your API and you're building, you're creating that much bandwidth, that's a happy problem because you're probably doing something very, very right. Anywho, you're going to want to get yourself an AWS Lambda account, and you can do that through AWS. So sign up, follow the protocols. You're going to have to you're going to have to put a credit card on file, but that's just because they want to make sure you're serious. It'll take a couple of days for this stuff to get sorted. Mind you, you might be lucky. It might happen to you quicker. It took me a couple of days when I originally set this all up. And then once you've set up and you're in, what you want to do is you want to log into your console. And I'm just going to, this is the management console for all of their services. And I have a bunch of them. The one you want to be looking at is Lambda. By the way, if you're into programming, take a look at Cloud9. If you love databases, check out DynamoDB. And if you want to build your own APIs, well, they got that too. Anyway, Lambda. So let's go to Lambda. Now, what's interesting about Lambda is all you're going to need to do is create a function. Don't worry about applications and all the other stuff. Just click this big orange button up here called Create Function, right? Now, there are blueprints and apps and all the rest of it. Let's just keep this simple. Author from scratch, right? So leave this one checked. We're going to call this one test demo. Oops, there you go. No spaces allowed. Now it says, what programming language do you want this function to run in? If you look here, there are all of these programming languages. Now, I'm familiar with Python. I'm familiar with a bunch of these languages, but for the purposes of this, like, you could have programmed in that, but I'm going to stick with Python 3.8. So it's going to create Python. Don't worry about permissions. Just take all the defaults, hit create function. Watch what happens. It spins up a function, and it actually puts a bunch of basic code in. And when it comes back, there you go, successfully created. So we've now got test demo. Now look at this. This is a visual layout, and I'm going to show you something over here in a minute that's going to just blow your mind. Right now, this is a little piece of code sitting on a serverless cloud, server. Anyway, it's out there on the internet. You don't need to worry about it. And there's the code. And right now, this is a very, very simple piece of code that calls a function. These are standard input headers for this because this is a generic function, and that's the return. So if you don't know programming, don't worry too much. But you're going to have to learn a little bit to make something like this work. So the whole idea here is that this function is called test demo. It's going to run that code. Now you're thinking, okay, that's great, James, but how do I make that get connected to a URL like in the example over here? What you do is you add a trigger. And he goes, what kind of trigger do you want to add? And you go, I want to add an API gateway. So you go, add the API gateway. And it says, well, what do you want to do? Well, it says create an API, and click on that. Ignore the other two, they're mine. I'm playing around with them. Now look at this, HTTP API or REST API. Now you can pick whichever you want. HTTP APIs are quicker and easier, so we're going to stick with it, and we're going to keep setting it to open. That means that you don't have to worry about authentication, no rubbish with security. It's your function, you're playing, you're testing. I do recommend, though, later you take a close look at how you can protect your function. You wouldn't necessarily want your URL getting out into the wild and then hundreds and thousands of people spamming it and potentially running up your costs. Remember, you get 1 million calls for free or whatever it is, but eventually there are some costs, so you have to protect the call. I'm going to click Add. This is actually creating an API. Yes, really, an API. And look at this. It's linking it to the test demo. Look at this. The trigger test demo API was successfully added to the function test demo. This means the function is now receiving events from the trigger. Now, don't worry too much about what that means. I'll give it to you in simple speak. When someone calls that API, and I'll show you how they get called, click on this, scroll down, look at this. Can I move this out of the way? Here we go. Let's open her up. Look at that. It just created a URL. That is the actual URL of that function. All right? So when that URL gets called, that function there will run. You follow? When that URL gets called, like up here, look at this. When that URL gets called, and in this case I had parameters, it will quite literally trigger something over here and then fire the associated function. Let me show you the function that gets called. This was mine that I wrote. There it is, FN library. There's the API. There's the function. Same as before. Look, see, there's an API call there. Let me show you the function. Now, don't panic. This is a bit more involved. This is my code I was working on. But this is what it does. See? It runs this code. And there's that one that you're familiar with in the other one. See? In this case, it runs some code, and at the very end, look at this. It returns a bunch of text. And that is what shows up there. See? Version v2 body status code. Look, version v2 body status code, variables, things like that. Again, you do need to understand a bit of coding. I don't really want to get too much into the programming of this and the specifics of Python versus all the other languages, or even how to code this sort of thing, not at least in this video clip. I just wanted to show you how the pieces come together. So if you want to extend your ManyChat bot and you're not sure how to do it, this is how you do it. You use an external request. Let me cancel this. You get to it here. You go actions. You go click up here. You scroll down until you get to external request. See? It says add your request, pulls up the window. If you were over here and you built your function in particular, let's see, here's test demo, which I just made. I'm not sure if this is actually going to function properly yet because I've been flying through this and I haven't tested anything. Let me get my face out of the way again. Let's open this up. There's the test demo. Let's copy it. Let's come back here, paste it. Oh, look at that. It worked. It says hello from Lambda. Let's go see what it did. And it says hello from Lambda. All right, watch this. I'm just going to prove to you this is not rigged. All right, we're going to change this to hello. My name is James. All right, up here to save it. Let's go back over here to our magic thing. It said hello from Lambda. Hit test the request. Hello, my name is. Why did I lose James? Well, that's interesting. Huh. Was James a special word? Well, that's wonky. Hang on a sec. Now it's got me thinking. Let's just add another character and see if that does something. By the way, this is the fun part of coding. Oh, look at that. Don't ask me why putting an exclamation point on the end made my name appear. I'd have to go into debug mode to figure that one out. Like I said, I'm doing this without a safety net and throwing it all together very quickly just to show you how it works. So that is an external request being called from a function I just made over in Lambda called test demo. Now I can make that do anything. I'm not passing any parameters in. Notice I'm not passing anything, but I could if I wanted, and then I would have to code them in here, and then I can do whatever I want with them. And then I return them in here. And as you see, it comes back here. Anyway, that is the essence of how you create external requests. And the biggie is you got to get yourself over to AWS and you want to get yourself a Lambda account. And then you can do all this. If you have any questions and you feel like you want to know something, shoot me an email or find me online and ping me, or wherever this is being posted, ask me something in the thread and I'll do my best to answer. Okay. Anyway, my name's James Birchall. I hope you found this useful. I'm sure it's making your head spin, so I apologize in advance. But when the dust settles and you start to see what you can do with this, it is epic.